ready for 2023. In January, Into the Apex will return to the historic Daytona International Raceway for the Rolex 24 for the biggest road show yet. Porsche, BMW, Cadillac, Acura. Who will begin the GTP era victorious? Follow intotheapex.com for trip details and meet up with the show live from Daytona Beach. Is where real and virtual motorsport meet. From the ITA studio, to the paddock, to the sim rig. Pull up a chair, pour a drink. This is the Into the Apex podcast. Into the Apex podcast.
Happy Thanksgiving to our American listeners and fellow motorsport folks. Welcome to a special edition of Into the Apex. Longtime listeners of the show will be quite familiar with Operation Motorsport, with guests joining us from the organization over the past couple of years now. This week, we go along for a journey halfway across the world. But first, what is Operation Motorsport? Opmo's own Jason Leach joined us in a past episode and described it well.
So Operation Motorsport is a nonprofit organization based in Canada and the United States, and we engage medically retiring and wounded service members typically as a transition from the service, in helping them rebuild a sense of purpose, team, and identity. Depending on the individual and where they're at in their military career, once the military has decided they're no longer fit for service, whether it's due to mental health or physical challenges. That could be a pretty trying time for an individual, and it can really kind of shake up their life into kind of what's next. So, every service member, comes in and they join that family, they join that sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, and that gives them that sense of purpose, team, and identity. And, when they leave, that's kind of lost. So we use motorsports as the catalyst to help rebuild those tenets, because we find so many similarities between motorsports and military operations. The best way I can describe it is those small team dynamics, knowing what that person on your left and your right is doing, knowing that you might have to jump in and help out just in case something happens. But on the day of competition, or in the military world, the day of your mission, you can practice and rehearse and plan all you want. But, there's a saying called, Murphy's Law, and Murphy's probably going to pop up and throw you a curveball that you may not have planned for. Motorsports is the same thing. If it's a tire puncture, contact with another car, what have you, the crew has to jump in and now work as a team to continue to achieve their goals, which is, in motorsports, getting to the top of the podium.
The journey for the Operation Motorsport crew on this occasion was to the Race of Remembrance. The crew had been there once before, and then COVID hit. The race was virtual on iRacing, and this year, 2022, the effort was bigger than ever. Our own Jason Bivens went along to co-drive with several drivers in an American car, and Jason and Hunter Reeve, an Operation Motorsport beneficiary who we frequently raced with on iRacing in the Operation Motorsport iRacing League and in endurance events, was there and joined us. Jason talks about the effort to get there, the effort to undertake this event, which required these drivers and crew members to go from U.S. and Canada to Dublin, Ireland, to a ferry across to Wales, to Anglesey Circuit. And I encourage you to look at Google Maps and look at this circuit. It's on the coast of Wales and in a very rural area. And there really couldn't be a more beautiful site for this kind of event.
We could talk about this for hours. We're going to try to put it in a bite-sized portion and be able to take it all in. But it was a massive effort that Hunter and I were able to be a part of. There was 39, but we're going to call it 40. There was 40 people who crossed the Atlantic to partake in this. Skip Barber was gracious enough to provide us with two Honda Civic Type R turnkey race cars. These are factory built cars, very fast cars. They shipped those over in a container. We also were able to have a sponsorship from Michelin, and they shipped over just a mountain of tires and rims for us. So we had wet and dry tires. It was just a huge effort. So we had about 70% of the team is from Canada, and the rest are from the U.S. I think myself and one of the beneficiaries, Adam Poppenhaus, we were the only ones on the West Coast. So we had the longest day of travel. But so everyone, had to take multiple flights. We pretty much most people arrived in Dublin, and then they took a ferry from Dublin to Wales. I got super lucky, so I came 2 days, I think, later than the main body of everyone, and I guess the majority of the people had a ferry, and they had something like, it was in meters, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that means, but it was a lot of meters. The seas were angry, multiple meters, lots of meters of seas. We're going to call it, for our purposes, 15-foot seas. And and there were reports of seasickness and all that. I came later on with this, one of the managing directors of Opmo, Jason Leach, and we had a beautiful ferry crossing, ferry passage, very calm seas, and we relaxed and kind of got to know each other's story, and that was nice. So when we get to Wales, we have this beautiful farm that was rented out, farm and adjoining cottages where we have everyone set up.
And now let's meet Hunter Reeve, who joined us and co-drove the American Honda for Operation Motorsport and the Race of Remembrance.
So 2017, I got out of the Army. I was medically discharged. And I went to go work overseas as a contractor. I came back and just kind of looking at things to do and going to school, and randomly, I think 2019 maybe, I found a Facebook post from Tooth Autosport, who's in the area here in Ottawa. They're based at Calbogan Motorsports Park, and about an open house for Operation Motorsport. And I was like, well, what's that? So I dug into that, and I found out what Operation Motorsports was, and I thought, well, that's cool. I'm going to go have to check that out. And I signed up, and I guess the rest is kind of history. Worked as a beneficiary, doing some things in the background with Tooth Autosport. I didn't work a race for a while, not for any particular reason, just to do with Opmo or the team. I was going through some health issues not related to my time in the military. So, but started working with them more. I had a weekend with Radical Canada into 2021, and then beginning of 2022, I got hired full time at Tooth Autosport.
There certainly was a sim racing and iRacing connection to this event. Both beneficiary drivers, Theo Barulsema on the Canadian car and Hunter Reeve on the American car, participated in the Operation E-Motorsport iRacing League. You could say they were vetted in that process. Their racecraft on the sim, their speed on the sim, and everything else did matter. Hunter talks about starting on sim racing, getting into the Operation Motorsport League, how he got picked, and when he knew he was picked to become the driver of a Honda Civic Si in Wales.
It was really tight between me and Theo for those first two seasons in 2020 before we figured out we got picked. So it went back and forth a lot. So I think that's why they picked us. And then we both kind of have some knowledge of driving a car in real life. So I think that helped as well. But it was usually him or I winning when we were first starting the league in the beneficiary class. So, I think it was a tail into 2020. Obviously, we knew it wasn't going to happen in 2020 because of COVID. So, and then the goal I think was 2021, and it didn't really come together. I think there's just, it's still COVID was an issue then, and so I think we're shot for 22, and that's why I ended up being there. But Travis Hill and Trevor Hill were both running in the league, and I think they use that as a gauge to kind of watch racecraft between us, and that's how we ended up getting picked. So I can't remember. I think we had a couple other pros there at the time, but they use that as part of the equation to figure out who they're going to put into the driver development program. Yeah. I think sim racing is a great pathway and a good way to learn to drive a car in real life. And I'm kind of proof to that concept, right? And for me, especially by getting in a car in real life, the first time I actually raced, we did a Lucky Dog race in October, and I was going to do the race start on Sunday, and I was pretty nervous. And as soon as we got to the line, I'm like, oh yeah, I've done this before. We're good. Just keep going, So, yeah, it's good. It's cool to use that as a tool to help decide. So the car we had is a 2007 Honda Civic Si. It's one of the cars in Tooth Autosport's fleet. It's mostly set up to be a champ car, lucky dog car, if I could speak. It's a front wheel drive platform, obviously, but it's more set up to be kind of user friendly, good for more novice drivers. It's a good development car. It's front wheel drive, so usually the older cars we raced, we had EK and EGs, was kind of where Tooth started off of, and then those cars, if they're set up in a certain way, are absolutely, as one customer put, diabolical because they're that off throttle oversteer sensitive. So the FG is great. It's a longer wheelbase, so it's a great car to just jump in and figure out how to get a front wheel drive car around the track.
So once Hunter's picked to drive in this race, our next question is, how did you prepare? The answer really was he couldn't that much. The track itself was not in iRacing, and R Factor might have been the only option. In fact, Jason Bivens spent a little bit of time on that sim just to get ready for this race. But ultimately, it was something that would come down to the moment.
It didn't really spend, until, I guess, the beginning of the year when we found out what we were driving, a lot of time prepping for it because I just didn't know. You approach a front wheel and rear wheel drive car differently. It's not like two opposite worlds, but there's a different way to do things. So once we figured out this year, I got Anglesey on Assetto Corsa and started getting front wheel drive cars, and I would play with the toe in the rear to make it a little bit more snappy in the back, to kind of get your brain to be like, okay, you put in throttle more to get it to straighten out, and use that. Or you could use it as a tool to help you rotate better, one of the two with off throttle oversteer. So kind of making your brain work that, because anytime I've ever driven on track, it's all been rear wheel drive cars. So it wasn't until this year I drove a front wheel drive car on track.
The purpose of the Race of Remembrance is lost on nobody there. It's there to honor and remember those who have sacrificed, those who have been lost. The race itself stops on day 2. Everything stops, and there's silence and remembrance. Hunter describes pushing through pain and honoring memory all at one time.
One thing that really, got to me, but sunk deep was one of the other beneficiaries on the U.S. car. His name is Scott Andrews. Last stint, I was going to do the last 20 minutes. I caught the flu a week before I was supposed to fly out, to the point where I was like, I might not even make it. And all through the week, I still wasn't feeling that great. And the other thing with one of the downsides of endurance racing is you got to share a car. I'm a gorilla. We're all about the same size, but I was a gorilla. I was a little cramped in the car with my legs, and unfortunately with my back issues, I kind of got, that got exacerbated through the whole weekend, but I wasn't feeling that great. And Scott comes up to me and he hands me a memorial bracelet of one of his buddies. His name's Sergeant First Class Christopher Sealas. He was in Afghanistan, and provided covering fire for a medevac helicopter and put his life on his line. Unfortunately, he died, and last year was awarded the Medal of Honor. And Scott comes up to me and he says, "Hey, dude, I want you to wear this." And going back to what we were joking about earlier, somebody's cutting onions in the helmet, and I wasn't feeling that great, like I said, but it's like, well, shit, I got to get in the car now. I absolutely have to. So that was for me one of the big moments from the weekend that really stuck with me.
Jason Bivens describes the meaning of the remembrance ceremony and how it affected him on the grid as a civilian.
It was such a somber event. I was wearing sunglasses, and I was happy because, yes, many onions were being chopped. And we had, a couple members of our crew were helping out. Craig got to read, I think it was a scripture, and then we had Brock was in his full dress uniform. He got to lay a wreath. And there was others, Scott as well. I think, yes, I believe Scott walked up with Brock to lay the wreath. So the whole team was super involved with it. And yeah, I was chopping mad onions and happy for my sunglasses. So that was good. And then, but like you said, Cameron is like no relation to the director of Avatar, but it's yeah. So then it picks it back up, but it was a somber, solemn moment, and it's myself as a civilian, it was really cool to be kind of invited and welcome into your world for a minute. And I've not been through what you guys have been through, but I did feel the seriousness and the impact, and what wasn't lost on me, and I'm able to go and share this with other people now.
After quite a year for Hunter Reeve, virtually and in the real world of motorsport, we ask him what's next. What are his goals in motorsport with Operation Motorsport and beyond?
Yeah, for me, just it's like I've said, I work full time at Tooth Autosport, but Race of Remembrance was my last big event of the year, so it's kind of nice to just chill for a little bit. But things are already ramping up for next year. For me personally, driving, just try and do anything and everything. I hope I can get some Champ Car in next year. Might have a couple things that we're working on, but it's depending on another situation in my control. So more track time. Because of my experience, I'm working towards becoming an instructor at Calabogie. So trying to, get as much seat time, get out there as I can. So I do need to add one more thing to the end of the weekend, or what the big moment of the weekend. And it's a big thank you to Elliot Whitfield. My mom and my wife came to the race this year, which is cool to have them there. And, like I said, they helped me a lot when I was going through some health issues. So this is as much as it for me as it is for them. So it was cool to have them there. But Elliot saw my wife in the garage and he's like, come here. And had her put on the radio and, said a little, had her say a little message as it came across the line for the checkered flag. So I got to say a big thanks to Elliot. That was really cool.
The name Elliot Whitfield, an Opmo beneficiary that has been with Team Hardpoint for the past year or more, will be familiar to Into the Apex listeners. Elliot joined us after the Rolex 24 earlier this year and spoke about his own experience in comms in the military, which led him to Wales doing exactly that through this program.
Yeah. So pretty much comms is pretty much my main job I've done while in the Army. Of course, I had a couple special assignments, but pretty much that's all I've done. And being in my MOS, which is pretty much 25 uniform, for those who might be listening or whatever, and other Army soldiers, so they might know what I'm talking about. But we can be in any kind of unit, so we can go from infantry to armor to field artillery to even a logistical type unit. So we can be in any kind of unit. We're not just in certain types of units. But pretty much what I can see that transfers over is pretty much like being organized and knowing what you have. When it comes to needing to get stuff repaired or having parts on hand when, say, a cable goes bad and you need to have another one to fix the issue that right then, that type of stuff there. To me, that goes with, when it comes to comms, that it doesn't matter if you're in the Army or the racing world or whatever, you should always have those type of cables on hand. So it can be fixed right away, and it's not you're scrambling or having to run over to somebody else to try to get it. I mean, it happens sometimes where that you might have to borrow, but if you can plan ahead and know that you have it, you just go to your stash or whatever and be like, hey, this is what it is. Hey, it's in this drawer. Bring me one, change it out, and you're good to go. So,
Some final thoughts on this event and our guests as they walk us through the entire thing. In talking with Hunter and Jason, in seeing the social media, the videos, the posts over the entire race week and weekend, it all comes together. Everything came together. We've seen up close ourselves how Operation Motorsport works in the real paddock, on the iRacing sim, as a community. And it seemed that this event brought every person, or at least most every person, to one place as one team for one effort. Everybody served a purpose, everybody had a task, had a mission, and everybody executed that mission. You can tell from hearing from individuals that were there, drivers, crew, everybody, that it impacted them, that it's unforgettable. As Jason Bivens said to me off air, it was the opportunity of a lifetime for anybody. We're proud on Into the Apex to continue to support Operation Motorsport in any way that we can and spread the mission. We can't wait to see everybody in the paddock in January. Check out operationmotorsport.org and see how you can get involved in this great group of folks. This has been Into the Apex.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.